Miss Crowley's in her kitchen. She's making somebody dinner, and I'm starving right now. So it's not a good idea to be cooking in front of me, Mrs. Crowley.
I'm sorry, but I got to get the pork chops on. I got hungry kids. I got the hungry kids. My Italian mother, I feel her in my ear. Sorry, don't mind.
I can be over a little later if you want me to. I'll take a helicopter back to wherever you live. So thanks. I got a kick, Julian, I got a kick out of you. I got a kick out of Jessica because Jessica's a thinker. Jessica is a thinker. Jessica reacts to stuff. She doesn't know necessarily advertise it to the Western world, but Jessica is a thinker. Now, I mean, I may remember to say this to the whole class. I think I said it to one or two of you privately. Is you know that, and you know that Stony Brook has an affiliation with St. John's. I teach in the St. John's program, the doctoral program, and I hope you know this. The St. John's and Stony Brook have a partnership, which is very rare nowadays. It's not quite as good a partnership as it used to be for the Stony Brook students. They've changed a few things, but neither here nor there at this point. So what you can do is you can absolutely, when you finish this program, jump right over to the St. John's program at a discount. I'm not as great a discount as it used to be, but at a discount. Now, both of you are not even less than half my age, so you got plenty of time to think about this. But I would, if I were you, both of you, I would recommend strongly that you think about it, at least explore it, and don't let the idea die because both of you are, like I said, thinkers, and that's half the battle. And then we have two more people coming on, Laura and Jack. Wife is all twisted because her windshield's cracked and she wants me to take care of it. I said, no, you can take care of that. You can win money at the machines. You can do that too.
Yeah, you just want enough to fix it. There you go.
Safe Flight, they come to your
Empty your house, yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Jack is back. I can tell he's rolling his beard again. Laura, did you see my note?
I just want to show you something.
All right, can we do it? We can do that after the meeting if you want, or tomorrow. It's up to you.
Today works. That's fine.
Okay, just remind me. I'll forget.
Okay, thank you.
I will forget as people seem to realize I do a lot of. Okay, wait a few minutes more for some folks. So many people, Laura, were asking me for feedback. I was trying to catch it, and some people kept going lower on the list of the emails, and that's what happened to you.
It's all good. Thank you.
Right.
It's okay.
All right, we'll wait a couple of minutes. Couple. I can smell the pork chops from here. I don't even like pork chops, but I'm sure I'll take a crack at them.
My mom makes them with like a cherry pepper, but don't worry because my kids won't probably eat it either. So I'm literally just cooking because I'm conditioned to have to cook a meal every night. So
My wife watches. We used to do them all day long, but now she just picks up two of my granddaughters from the bus stop about a couple miles away, and she makes something for them, and then she comes. Then as soon as the mother shows up, she jumps in the car and comes back home. And she doesn't even sit down. The coat doesn't even come off. She's cooking. I keep telling her I can cook things. I can't cook a lot of things, but I can cook some things. If you tell me what to cook, I'll cook. Like I tell her, I'll do laundry because I'm home all day. I can do laundry. How hard is it to do laundry? It's not like you go down the river and beat it against the rocks. You put it in the machine, And she says, "Oh, you don't know how to do it." Okay, that's reverse sexism, I think.
she's got to accept the help.
Exactly.
You got to do.
Jessica, I didn't think I was going to see you today. I thought you were going to be at your meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, we just ended. I actually left a little bit early.
Okay. I used to be CTA, a union executive board myself back in the days. Someday I'll tell you why I flipped from union over to back to the bad side, or whichever side you want to call is the bad side, or both, or to the other side, maybe a better way to put it.
I don't know. Today I was the bad side. I got stoned to death, so I didn't mind leaving early.
Okay. Unions exist because administration and boards didn't do the right thing by teachers. That's why unions exist. That's my union hat talking, right? And there's a but at the end of the sentence, but you and I will do that another day, Jessica. But most union people I've ever dealt with, they're pretty reasonable if you give them a chance to explain where they're coming from. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know somebody's not coming. Well, I'll give them 1 more minute. And just so you know, where I'm recording this particular session, Jack, I forgot to record for you last time I saw you. I apologize, but today I remembered. So hope that didn't interfere with your thinking. All right, we're going to start. And the first thing I'm going to do is, you already have the agenda. It's in Brightspace, but I'm going to pull it up, like I say to you every week. So it's not necessary for you to pull it up unless you just want to have it in front of you. Okay. And everything that's on here on the agenda that I think you see, tell me you see it. No, you don't see it because I didn't do share yet. Now you see it. Here we go. Okay. All right. Some of this is just reprints of last week. So I'll just start my own engine on that count. So this is week 8. All right. Somebody said to me again, I keep getting asked the same question. The course ends on the 15th. For some reason, there's some kind of myth out there that people think it ends on the 8th. It does not. It ends on the 15th. And so we have 2 more weeks after this for me to enjoy your company. And here we go. So this is from March 1st to March 8th. I already said that last week was asynchronous, and basically what I was doing was giving you the time to use that time to work on your assignment that's due today, which we'll come back to in a moment. As far as materials are concerned, the decision model is on this handout that you have. Okay. The Room Yatan model is underneath that. You can't see it very well, but there it is. And without giving you a headache as I go back up and down the stage here, you have in front of you, you have a module that has this agenda, week 8. You have another module. I've been talking about this PowerPoint since the first day I met you, but the module is I had the whole PowerPoint loaded into Brightspace as well. And beneath that, I just at the very last minute decided to, why is this happening? Or was I just talking about it? You have what I call the FBCL, the Futures-Based Change Leadership PowerPoint. And then I put 2 scenarios on the very bottom of this agenda. So there's quite a few words and pages in this particular agenda. Okay, my goal is to meet and greet. I've been meeting and greeting you since 4 o'clock, some of you anyway. And housekeeping issues. First thing I wanted to talk about was you did a great job with the comments on the decision making. I'm sorry, on the discussion questions. You're doing nice jobs with those. So much so that I haven't got the time to read everybody's comments about everybody else's comments. But I take that back. I read them all. I just don't necessarily reply to all of them. Otherwise, it just takes more time than I have to give to that. Oh, give that over to. But I applaud you for that. You're doing a nice job with that, and that's great. So I wanted to say that you have a discussion question for this week coming up. I'll come to in a moment. I already said that the 15th is the last day of the course. Somebody was telling me today that your next class starts on the 20th. I guess it's just the way they're trying to shoehorn the winter session with these spring sessions in with the spring sessions over to the summer ones. So I guess somebody said you had a law class coming up, and I was telling, I think it was either Karen or Marie, that that means that's the third most important course, because that's more interesting than most of the other courses you take, the law class. But I always say the same thing. The most important class you take is a supervision class. If you had that already, that's great. If you haven't had it yet, throw your soul into that one, because that's really what administrators do. They supervise, and they know how to grow people to become better instructors and better parts of the whole with a W. And then the second most important course, I think, is about change. This course specifically is not about change. It's about being a school district leader, but you all know I've been working hard to include change issues wherever I can. All right, now let's get clear about this premise here. Today you have an assignment due, all right? Your assignment is to post to the discussion forum, all right? Post it to the discussion forum. If you haven't already, I haven't checked. I left the space for that in Brightspace. Your 5-slide presentation about your APA. Don't make it more than 5 slides, I'm begging you, all right? It's a 5-slide presentation, capture it all. I made the comment to somebody this afternoon that, and I had read this, and I'm not practicing when I preach, when I tell you what I had read. I had read that no PowerPoint has any value if it goes over 13 words. If you have more than 13 words on a slide, it's too much. Now, I have to tell you that in my whole lifetime of PowerPointing, I probably have never followed the rule. But by the same token, you don't want to put a whole bunch of text up there. You want to break it down so people can read it. So that's important for you to recognize. I'm not going to give it back to you if you have all text there, but do the best you can to keep it simple. But by tonight, you should be posting a 5-slide presentation of your APA. Okay? Then the other piece of that is that by next week, all right, any of you should pick any 3 that you want. I was going to assign people the 3 other people, but I didn't want to get involved with that. Just pick 3 of the, I think there's 12 people in the class, 11 or 12. Pick 3 of those people and just respond to what you see. And again, we don't want you to criticize. All you want you to do is to maybe ask questions about why they put something in there, or praise them for something that you thought was something that you would want to perhaps include into your slides. So comment on 3 other presentations. 2 weeks from today, all right, we'll give you a chance to adjust the PowerPoint based on the feedback that I've given you and based on the feedback that your colleagues have given you. If you feel that you should, what you'll do is you'll fix the PowerPoint. You'll amend the PowerPoint to more nearly reflect what you think is a better job than what you offered up today. Nothing. And if you, by the way, think that everything you did was golden, and everybody has told you that it was golden, including me, then that's good too. But the actual assignment is not due until the 15th. Today, the only part of the assignment that's due today are the 5 PowerPoint slides. And if you can't get it in today, get it in tomorrow. But after that, I'm going to get cranky about it, because people want to obviously take a look at these things, unless you have some kind of personal reason that I'm not aware of. All right. On the 15th, you're going to post a narrative. You're going to send the narrative directly to me. Don't post it to discussion. Send the narrative to me by email, Stony Brook email. All right. And I'm going to read it to see what I'm really most interested in, as I was saying to somebody this morning, is that what kind of thinking that you invested in this. And I want to comment on that in 1 second. So somebody says, Bernardo, your fingers are crossed. Why are they crossed? I want to comment on what I've seen so far. There's also a discussion question. I don't expect a dissertation on this, but since today we're going to be finally getting around to doing some futuring things. The question is, how do you see futuring / culture diagnosis, which you did early in the semester, / decision-making, which we've talked about ad nauseum, and I'm going to review quickly again tonight, in operation in your district? Do a PMI on that. So short, I mean, that's all fancy college talk for saying, do you see futuring? Do you see accounting for the culture? Do you see proper kind of decision-making occurring in your district? If not, why? Okay. So that's the discussion question. 2 things expected for this week. Comments on the PowerPoints, 3 of your colleagues, and a discussion question about futuring. Okay. Now, before I forget, because my fingers were crossed, what I'm seeing as the thing where the plans that I've looked at closely and have had a chance to give feedback to, I say about half of you have specifically asked for feedback from me, and Jessica, I haven't caught up to you yet because I didn't get the permission to look at your revised piece until a minute before the class started, but I'll get to that tomorrow morning. Really format issues with the plan. You're putting things in the wrong boxes to some extent. But the biggest issue I see is the right-hand column, the criteria. I guess that some of you aren't clear on what we meant by criteria. So I'm going to give you a quick example, and then you have to just bounce it off yourself as to whether you think you may need to revise that. Criteria means, how would you know whether the strategy that you identified worked? What are you looking for? I mean, one person wrote one word, observation. And my answer to that was, okay, observation is a good criteria. And criteria is a plural word, which is to say, you should have more than one way to evaluate anything. The same way when someone asks you to evaluate a student, I'm hoping that you just don't evaluate a student based on one test score. I'm pretty sure that you don't. There's other things that you look for to evaluate whether the child's learning or not. And so you should have multiple ways to evaluate whether a strategy has worked or not. So a lot of you said professional development, which is the easiest answer to a lot of the strategies that you're talking about. And then you wrote observation. So I don't know what that means. Here's what it means. What you meant was you or someone's going to observe a teacher changing her teaching habits potentially because she's gone through some professional development. And you can document that you taught how to a new way to divide fractions, and I wouldn't be able to teach it the old way myself because I barely can do it myself. But let's say you got professional development in some kind of math skill, and now the teachers are now beginning to adapt the new way to do this from the professional development into their actual lesson instruction, and you've seen it. You've seen changes. That's a concrete criterion that you're using. Somebody you say put one up about using the 5 whys to get root causes down. All right, and I think the person of our own said, "Well, I'm looking for at least 3 root causes." All right, so when somebody else said they're looking for a 20% raise in achievement, and my question to that person was, the minute you put a number in front of people kind of twitch. But that's a legitimate criterion. I'm not saying it's a great criterion necessarily, but it's a legitimate one. Oh, for heaven's sakes, can the kids divide by fractions better? How do you know? Well, I gave a test and the scores went from 80 to 100. That's a 20% increase. I wouldn't necessarily go with 20%, but I might say I'm going to build this in over 3 years. And the first year I'm looking for 5%. The next year I'm looking for 8%, and the next year I'm looking for 12%. So go back. If I haven't spoken to you specifically about it, my strongest advice is to go back to that column, that criteria column. See that you have multiple criteria, and see that you're clear about it. You're not vague about it. That's not as a throwaway. That's a very critical piece to how this plan is going to work. And the reason why is because you want the plan to be effective, first of all. And politically, Julianne and I were talking about this before the class started, about it from a different perspective before. The reason is you have to know that you have to answer to, and I don't like the word answer. Here, I'll use the word that you don't want to hear, but here it comes. You've got to show accountability to, oh, I got to just pain in my stomach. I don't know what that was. You've got to show that you've got accountability, that your idea worked or didn't work. People are paying us a lot of money to do the things for kids that we are professionally charged to do, and they want to know that it works. Now, sometimes, and I could count it on one hand, but it does happen, and I'm talking from a political point of view with a small p, not Republican, Democrat. I'm talking about just a small p political point of view. A board member may say, you know, I know you have this new way to teach math. How do you know it's working? Now you can say, well, here's the plan, Mr. So-and-so. Well, show me what the data say. And you say, okay, I'll show it to you, or show it to the superintendent to show to you down the line. This way, the community, who sometimes, as you know, in the form of the Board of Education, although most of you praise your boards of education, I noticed in the in your reviews of your Board of Education meetings, they're the ones who need to be convinced that you're working this out politically. But educationally, the superintendent and your other administrators need to know that you're keeping your fingers on the pulse of this to make sure that the patient feels better. All the more reason to pay attention to that. Okay. Are there any questions about anything associated with the APA? Because I'm getting tired of talking about it, but I'll be happy to continue the conversation if we need to. Any questions at all? I'm going to count to 10, not to 6. I counted to 12. Okay, that's double teacher wait times. So I'm hoping that, and again, if you still have a question, you can ask it anytime you want. And if you still need to call me, I had some great conversations. I actually very much enjoyed the conversations I've had the past couple of days. And one other comment I just wanted to mention too, your comments about Finland have been astounding. I'm so pleased. I didn't decide to give you that video until the last minute. I wasn't sure if I should use it or not with you. I was using it with another class actually. And your comments about Finland are astounding. I'm so pleased with that. And I'm going to praise Pork Chop Mrs. Crowley here, because she couldn't get her video to open. You know what Jessica did? Jessica went into YouTube and she found more YouTubes about Finland, and not the one I posted, and she used her own. She used them. Now Jessica has a doctorate in Finland education right now. Nice job, Jess. All right.
If
But
it wasn't so cold, I would be out of here.
Oh, you want to laugh? Let me deviate. There's Apple TV Plus. I love Apple TV Plus. For those of you who have it, there's a show called, just went up, The Reluctant Traveler, and the guy who was in Schitt's Creek, Eugene Levy, he's in the show. He's the star of the show, and all he does is travel all around the world to all these places. The first show, Jessica, is Finland. He doesn't do anything with schools at all, zero. But he shows what they do with all that cold, and they can have it, as far as I'm concerned. But if you have nothing to do, if you get Apple TV, I'll give you your money back if you don't enjoy this show about Finland. And I'll leave it at that. But it's a good job. And
I really liked it. It was really good.
Who watched it? Nick?
Yeah, I watched it. I watched
Wasn't
the
that
first
good?
like 2 episodes.
Yeah. Did you see the one about Venice?
I think I fell asleep during that one. I'm more of a background TV kind of guy. I'm not like that invested, but the Finland episode was very good.
That was great. All right, here's another one. I'm going to shift it off of that one. Go watch what's a spy thing? Slow Horses. I think that's what it's called. Slow Horses. It's a spy thing, British spy thing. So good. No, and Ted Lasso is coming up. I think starts this Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, back to work. Thanks, Nick. All right, so I've already explained everything about that. Going to spend a few minutes. All right, now here's my content for the night. I'm going to zip through this because I started to do some of this 2 weeks ago, and I don't want to beat it to death. All right, so and then I'm going to go to futuring for the balance of the night. And they go together. The absence of futuring. Now, by the way, I've never given you a definition of futuring. Here's a definition. Futuring is the act of identifying what's possible, probable, and preferable. That's the simplest definition I can give you. Futuring is the act of, or you can call it the acts or the art of what's possible, what's probable, what's preferable. I'm reading a book now called The Midnight Library, and it's about a woman who commits suicide and then goes.
I read that. I loved it.
I'm about halfway through. Don't tell me the end.
Okay.
It was so good. Also,
Was it
another
good?
thing I loved.
Yeah.
It's such a quick read.
I got it on Audible. I don't like Audible books, but I'm listening, so it's taking a long time.
Oh, loved it. So good.
So the book talks. So don't tell them the end, but tell them what the book's about. Nick,
So like basically this woman, like you said, took her own life and she goes and sees the other realities she could have had based on decisions she made. So if she had gone to school for this, or if she had met this person, what her reality would have been. And it's kind of this like purgatory she's in between the afterlife and present life.
Well said. Anyone add to that, Jess?
No, that was it. It was, and
That's
it's
it.
supposed to be like an inspirational.
All right, so again, I haven't finished it, so don't
Yeah.
tell me any more than that. But what I'm enjoying is a librarian who says more than once. In fact, she said something. I was in the car when I wanted to write it down. I was going to have a car accident if I did. How did she put it? Life has infinite possibilities along the lines of what Nick said. So when you talk about futuring, ing is about the act or the art of recognizing what's possible, what's probable, and what's preferable. That's about multiple futures. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Possible is along the lines of that book. There's infinite possibilities to most anything based on what decisions people make, and then the combination of those decisions. Again, piggybacking from that book, there's only 6. I didn't know this till I heard it today. There's 6 possible moves you can make in chess. Opening a chessboard, 6 moves. After the second move, there's billions of possibilities, not millions, billions of possibilities. That's how complex it gets. And that's in a controlled 8x8, 64 square chessboard. And so when we think about the possible futures that are out there, there's just really too many to calculate. In my view, the key word, the key P is probable. Because there are things that are more probably going to happen than not. And the key is, I'm shouting on purpose, insofar as this applies to decision making, the key is accurately, or to the extent that you can, figuring out what the most likely probables are. And then to move it over to whether you like what you think will probably happen to what you want to happen. If what you want to happen is what will probably happen, life is good. But if what you want to happen is not what looks like it will probably happen, then you have decisions to make to more nearly bring about the preferable. I was telling Juliana that I'm sorry, I lost a house in Atlantic City. I'm exaggerating. Lost a few bucks in Atlantic City the first week of the winter break. Then I wasn't crazy, but we lost some money, and I was prepared to lose it. And we went to Jake's 58 a couple of days ago, and my wife is a slot machine fanatic. Most of the time, I just watch her play because I'm afraid to play because I don't like to lose. She's playing, and she turns, and we won a lot of money. not enough money to buy a villa in Tuscany, but we did okay, because she's not afraid of the probabilities. Well, my preferabilities are much more narrow. Now, if you know anything about gambling, if you go to the racetrack, which I've been prone to do in my day, you look at the odds, and you like to bet on the 50-1 horse, but the horse has a 50-1 odds. because it's probably not going to win. The horse that's got 2-to-1 odds, or sometimes even better than that, is the one that's probably going to win, but it also means you're going to also not win as much money because everybody else thinks the same thing. So when we're talking about futuring, we're talking about seeing how decision-making enables you as a school leader to identify the probabilities. Now, here's an example of a terrible decision. I think I meant to bring it up 2 weeks ago. It's a horrible thing. I heard more about it. And I wanted to, maybe you haven't heard what I heard. About 3 weeks ago, a girl was in New Jersey, was beaten very badly by some other girl, beaten up. And then they wind up videoing this, and they're putting it up on, I want to say TikTok, it could have been Instagram, one of those two things. And the kid took a tremendous amount of abuse. Well, the kid committed suicide. Now, the district superintendent apparently knew more about this child, and she was the child. I don't care if she was in high school or not. She was a child. And the child came from a very troubled home, and was victims of abuse and drug abuse, I think, too. And the superintendent got fired for this, by the way. Went in front of the board in executive session and basically laid out this kid's whole life in front of the board. And the board said, "Are you telling the whole district about it?" I'm not sure what happened after that, but what a terrible decision to make. What a terrible decision. I'll bring it even closer to home. I'm stammering because I'm not sure that, I know this is going to get your attention because it's in Newsday as we speak. I think you can probably guess what I'm going to bring up. The Valver children in Santa Mauritius, one of whom froze to death in the garage. And the father has been convicted, and the girlfriend who lived there is in trial now. Santa Mauritius administration and teachers and social workers clearly had done what they thought they should be doing, reporting to CPS, reporting the case out. But that kid died. I mean, if I'm a superintendent there, I would probably be second guessing myself. And if I was a principal there, and maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe I don't know everything, but wow, you see something as severe as that. That's the kind of responsibilities we have to bear in terms of decision making. I'm not sure if any of you are social workers or have a different opinion on this, but that's a matter of weighing the probables. Enough said. So to come back to decision making, everything's about deciding. Teachers make 300 decisions a day. Are they going to call on Johnny or are they going to call on Mary? Are they going to grade this way or that way? Are they going to ask this question or that question? That's a teacher who makes 300 decisions a day by research. How stressful is that? I don't have to tell you, more about that than I do nowadays. I have never seen research about how many decisions a building leader or a district leader has to make per day. It may not even be as many as frequently as what teachers have to make, but you can bet your bottom dollar that deciding is what we do. And so the pressure on making the correct decisions, long-term decisions and short-term decisions, is a study all by itself. Now, I'm fascinated by the act of deciding because I don't think I'm a great decider, as I may have told you that before. And so I study it very closely. My dissertation is on decision making. And I've done a lot of work on this. I have, and I've shared some of it with you along the way. This material that I already had given you, and I kind of narrated to you a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to review it. There's a good chapter, it's chapter 10 in the book. I urge you to take a look at it, but I don't think you should commit it to memory. One thing I like about the certification exams is they're not going to say to you, who is Vroom? You're not going to get a question like that on the certification exam. You might get a question that's about what Vroom said, but it's not going to say, this is what Vroom said. This is true or false. You're not going to get that kind of question, thankfully. But the whole issue of balance of stability and change about between individual and organizational decision-making is what district people particularly have to obviously pay a tremendous amount of love to as such. And I like this question, I like this saying, the exercise of leadership involves working with both individuals and groups to achieve, here you go, organizational goals. There's the key term there. Organizational goals. Now, Vroom talks about that, and I've mentioned Vroom to you more than once, where he talks about these kinds of decision-making processes that superintendents and central office people and principals employ. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And most of the time, they're rational. Now, you might want to stop and say, wait a minute, aren't all decisions made by a superintendent or any leader rational? And the answer is, not hardly. Sometimes we make really bad decisions. When I went back to you the first day of class and said, to what extent do you believe none of us is as smart as all of us? Remember we had a whole spectrum of points of view about that? Because sometimes the more people we have together, the more the worse the decision is, rather than the better than the decision may be. And so there are differences between rational decision-making and poor decision-making. I was going to use a worse word than that. And they're associated with leadership styles. So when we talk about leadership style, I'm going to shoot down here to F. That's Vroom Yatan. And I'm not going to tell you to offer it up to me, but I'm just going to tell you to try to answer the question between your ears, because I think it's important for you to realize this one way or another. Vroom Yatan, that's two different people, that's why there's a hyphen between the two of them, identified three broad categories of decision-making. Of working with groups to make decisions. One is autocratic. So you have the information, right? Or you get the information from the group. But you make the decision. You're not interested in anybody else's decision. I may have told you this war story. I think I did, or sometimes I forget what class I'm in. A couple of years ago, I was supervising an intern, and I went to she was working in a high school in the summer school. So I had to interview her, the summer school principal, who happened to be the building principal. And I said, could you give this woman some chances to work on the master schedule? Now, make no mistake about it, there's nothing more important. Well, I'm not sure if it's nothing, but it's in the top 5 priorities of any school, whether it's kindergarten or pre-K or high school or anything in between. It's nothing more important than a schedule, because the schedule is the values of the building. What's important? Am I going to give all my coaches 9th period off so they can get into the locker room and set the equipment up? Or am I going to give some people who are time to come in late in the morning because they have personal family matters that doesn't let them come into school when everyone else is supposed to come in? Am I going to make a schedule so my specials get special treatment, my musics, my PEs, my health education courses, or am I going to make them second-class citizens and make, if I'm in elementary school especially, now am I going to concentrate on instructional needs first? I'm sorry, academic needs first, at the expense of the music teachers and the PE teachers and whatever other computer teachers for that matter? That's all matters of values that the principal has to do. So this principal, I asked this question of, could you give us some time to do that? He says, absolutely not. So I looked at him, I wasn't going to ask him why, but he volunteered. He says, I make the schedule, nobody but me. So I said, okay, thank you very much. And that was the end of that conversation. Now, he may have been the best schedule maker in the Western world. I think he thought he was anyway. But for him to not to even consult his staff to find out whether his staff might have some opinions about what might make the school run better, it's crazy. But there is autocratic decision-making. Now, my question to you, and don't volunteer it for me, is how often do you see autocratic decision-making in your buildings or in your district? Some of you will tell me pretty often, from what I can gather.
I just saw it today. We
That's
have a
good.
it happens pretty frequently in my building. And we have a weekly grade level meeting that my administration attends, and we're usually told of decisions that they've made without any input from its staff. And it's kind of getting to a boiling point where staff members are getting frustrated and really expressing their frustrations.
Well, what's the message behind the music is that what you are victim of to?
What's the message? I feel like the message is that we're not being I feel like we're not being respected and our opinion doesn't matter and that they know better.
More than that, you're absolutely right. I'm not sure who I'm talking to, but more than that.
No.
Who?
It's Janelle.
Okay, Janelle, you and I have talked about this. More than that they're shoving things down your throat. What they're also doing is they're not empowering you to think like a leader. I may have told you this war story. I took over as a principal, an elementary principal, and the principal who preceded me was a very good principal, very effective guy, good guy. They didn't make any decisions. It was all about Bob decided which way they put their shoes on in the morning, kind of thing. So the first day of I'm a principal, I said, well, you're gonna have a fire drill today. By law, you're supposed to have a fire drill the first day of school. You probably don't know that. So I said, yeah, we're gonna have a fire drill. It's gonna be about 2:15, just so everybody knows. Other times I won't tell you when the fire drill is, but the first couple of times I'll tell you when the fire drill is. Because little babies, you don't want them to get crazed about these things until the teachers are prepared to have it happen. So I told them at the first faculty meeting, and then walking out of the thing, one of the teachers grabbed me and she said, which side of the hallway do you want us to walk on? So I looked at her, I said, which side of the hallway do you want to walk on? And she says, you want me to make that decision? I said, well, I want you all to make the decision. So I turned around to the faculty and said, which works best, right or left? And we didn't vote on it, but everybody said, well, right works. Duh, okay, there we go. I mean, that wasn't hard for me to do. I mean, come on. So Janelle, the less you're asked of your opinion, the less your opinion becomes valued by the leader. Not only are you insulted and demeaned, but you're not empowered. That's the worst part of that whole point. I feel badly for you if you feel insulted. I would be insulted too. But the worst part about it is you're being treated like you don't know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy is these are real respected teachers who have been, in the district for a really long time. And this particular administrator, he's new. I think this is his tenured year, young. And we just see the same issues over and over again. And we've expressed our frustrations. I don't know what else we could possibly do. I'm kind of at a point where if that's the decision you want, I go ahead with it. You know what I mean? I just do what I'm told, and I've become a rule follower, and, I close my door, I teach, and I go home. But there are other staff members that, are really and I do that really just for my anxiety and just for, I can't function if I put so much thought into it, right? But there are staff members that do feel, like you're saying, they do feel demeaned, they don't feel respected. And it's just not a good feeling.
They want to be empowered though, Janelle.
Yeah, no, I do. I do.
I'm not asking you, I'm not talking about the group. They want to be empowered to contribute.
Do I want to feel empowered?
No, the whole group, do they want to be empowered, or they just wanted to go through the motions and be what they are?
No, they absolutely want to be
Awesome.
empowered, which is why, they've become more and more vocal in their frustrations. I mean, we flat out told him, you are making decisions top down. Like we have spelled it out to him. But I think it's become more of like an ego thing where he doesn't want to go back and admit that he's made a mistake. And so he's going to stand by these poor decisions that he's made.
Yeah, pay attention to that one. I don't see a long future for that person.
Yeah.
Consultative is what it sounds like. Hey, what do you think? And here's how it goes. Hey, what do you think? I would need your input, but I'm going to share with you the group decision I make, but I want to hear what you have to say. Another war story. I haven't told too many war stories because I don't like professors who just waste everybody's time with the war stories, but another war story. I just became the principal and had an opening. In those days, you didn't get too many openings. It was like finding by hitting the lottery if you had an opening. I had an opening. So I go through resumes, and at that time was the personnel issues were way different from what you folks put up with to get hired today. So I went through the resumes, and I picked about 7 or 8 candidates out. Some people I knew, other people recommended to me to look at, and so on. So I went to the building rep, went to the union rep, and I said to the union rep, can you pick one teacher from each grade level and a couple of special area teachers to come in and sit in on the interview process, and a PTA lady. I went to the PTA lady, I asked her the same thing. Give me one parent. So he said, okay. So he brought in like one teacher from each of the grade levels, K6 then, and a couple of special area teachers. I had one parent from PTA. I think she might have been the president herself. And I'm leaving somebody out, but that was the group. So I brought the group in. I said, listen, we're going to interview all these candidates, and we're going to wean it down to X. In those days, they didn't even do demonstration lessons, which was a big mistake in those days. But I'm going to wean it down to we're going to wean it down to 3, and I'm going to ask for you to rank them. But you need to understand that it's my decision. I'll tell you why I made my decision, but it's going to be my decision. I'm not going to give that part up, but I'm certainly going to honor your point. Building rep said, that's great. Nobody's ever asked us to do that before. So we bring in the candidates, some of them really great, and got to the bottom line. And I said, okay, I know what I think is my top 3. Tell me what you think. So there was very little variation. Oh, I take it back. Here's what happened. Oh, that's the first story. We all agreed on number 1. It was easy peasy. So number 1 was everybody agreed on the same person. So I picked up the phone and that was the person. That was easy. Then the next year I had another opening. Brought in a similar group, said exactly the same thing. Got to the end, and everybody agreed on number 1. We didn't agree on number 2. I had a number 2 in my mind. Other people had different number 2s in their mind. But we did agree without a doubt that this one person was John Dewey reincarnated. She was amazing. Actually, she had been one of my students when I was teaching social studies methodology at Dowling. I knew her. I knew she was a star. She comes in and she just knocked down everybody. It was, oh my God, it was amazing. So I said, okay, who's your number 2? I go around the room and nobody really had any votes for number 2 with any significance. So I said, my number 2 is Mrs. X. And one lady kind of put her head up. Didn't like the idea I picked Mrs. X, but that was my number 2. So I go back to my office. I call up the first lady, Michelle. Michelle, when can you start? Come on over. She goes, Mr. Bernardo, I just took a job in Half Hour Hills. I said, Michelle, come on. She said, no, my sister sits there. I know it's a good place. I'd love to work for you, but this is a better situation for me. Okay, Godspeed. She steps off. I went out of the office. I went back to the building rep and I said, Michelle backed out. I'm going to go to the number 2 I chose. And he said, that's what you told us. You told us what the game rules were, and God bless you. So I picked up the phone. I called up Mrs. X and I offered her the job, and she climbed through the phone and took the job. Then I went back to the whole committee and I said, I picked Mrs. X. Well, this one lady goes berserk. I don't believe you picked her. She's this, she's that, she's that, she's this. I don't know how she was really kind of brutal about it. So I said, okay, that's the person I picked, and everybody else could at least live with her, if not be fine with her. So that's the person I picked. So she runs back to the building rep. She wants to file the grievance and all these other things. And the building rep said, you know what? The man told you the rules. That's the rules. You don't have to serve on these committees anymore if you don't want to do that, but that's the rules. Now that's about consultative. Sometimes, and by the way, teachers are not empowered to hire. Nowhere are teachers empowered to hire, anywhere in public school systems. No place. That's strictly administrative. In fact, even the principal is not empowered to hire. All they can do is offer. Then by law, and you learn this when you take the law class, it goes to the superintendent. The superintendent decides whether she wants to bring that person forward. Sometimes superintendents will bring 2 or 3 candidates forward, which I don't agree with. We'll bring 2 or 3 candidates forward, finalists, and have them meet the board. And the board has the power to approve the superintendent's recommendation. The board does not have the power to say, no, you pick Sally instead of Susie. They don't have the power to do that. They do have the power to reject whoever the superintendent recommends. So there's a little bit of a game that goes on there sometimes. So just know those, you'll hear that when you take that law class as well. Then the third choice is group choice, where the superintendent or the principal or who's ever running the meeting facilitates a whole decision. Doesn't make the final decision, tries to get everybody, and I sometimes don't like this word, commit to consensus. The consensus is a four-letter word sometimes. I happen to believe it with all my heart, although I do know it ain't perfect. Consensus means everybody can live with the choice. May not be their favorite choice, but they can live with it. Now, a thing I used to do, and this is a little trick, and I stole it from somebody, just passed away a couple of years ago, a good lady. She had this thing called fists to five. So, for example, if I said, and don't do this, but if I said to you, who's going to win the World Series this year, the Yankees or the Mets? Well, let me change that. The Yankees are going to win the World Series, which I don't happen to believe, quite frank. All right. The Yankees, so on a scale of 1 to 5, fist to 5, what fist means is 0. You don't agree with that. To 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, where you mean absolutely metaphysically embrace this point of view that yes, the Yankees will win the World Series. Put up your hand, and you look around the room. You might have 3 threes, 2 fists, one thumb, whatever, but you don't have consensus, which means according to the rules of consensus, you cannot go forward. So what the good leader does is he or she turns to people and says, can you explain why you picked the fist or why you picked a 5? And you get people to begin to kind of negotiate with each other. So everybody comes up with the same number. It's not a majority, it's the same number. It doesn't have to be a 5, but it has to be the same number. Very difficult to do. Consensus can sometimes be a royal pain in the neck. But that's our group facility, and we've talked about this. And I was talking to one of the folks this afternoon about Wohlstetter. I forget which one you were, but there's the Wohlstetter material again for the person who I mentioned this to. I think it was Marie. Where those things have to be present in a group so that they can be totally effective in a group. But to go back to Vroom, sometimes, and by the way, there are sometimes when you have to be autocratic, Janelle. If you have God forbid, and if you have I didn't want to say it because it's so scary to bring it up. But you have a fire in the building, okay? Principal doesn't call a vote to decide whether they should evacuate the building. He pushes the button and the kids get out of the building. That's not a vote. You can't do that. Trouble is that those kinds of decisions are very rare. Thank God. All right. Consultative has a lot of value if you get some people who really know what they're talking about and want to contribute. And group has a lot of power, except when they start to get silly with each other and they can't come to some kind of consensus, in which case it can be very frustrating. So pay attention to Vroom and Yeton. I mentioned Drucker and Simon and Mintzberg already to you, and they're described better in chapter 10. Now, I'm going to just mention Bowman and Deal because you've been talking about this in different ways. You just didn't know it throughout the semester. I did mention them last week. I just remembered that I did. There's different lenses you look at to how a school operates. Now, again, answer this between your ears. You don't have to raise your hand and volunteer it unless you really feel strongly about it. A school, any organization, not just a school, can run from any of or combinations of four ways to look at things. One is structural, which means hierarchical. The king is the king, and then there's the princes and the lords. It's the Game of Thrones. Okay. And sometimes that's got a lot of worth. If people don't have the time to be consultative or do group decision making. There's human resource, where the emphasis is on human relations. One of us was talking about that today. and versus what Janelle, it's a certain sense is Janelle, the autocratic approach that this principal, the superintendent or principal is taking with you is uniting the faculty against them. And so in a sense, he's creating a human resource issue among each other that you're really relating to each other better than you may have related in the past. I don't know that, but I was guessing at it. Human resource is about developing and nurturing each other. Here's the other word I used earlier. Human resource is about empowering each other to be the best educators in our cases, to collaborate, to make everything come together in a district. But make no mistake about it, every superintendent in the Western world also practices the political frame. But it isn't about whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, or whether you live on the north side of the tracks or the south side of the tracks. Although it sometimes is. It's about a competition for power. It's about a competition for resources. I always got in trouble with the music director, because he wanted me to schedule things a certain way so his tuba, guy who taught tubas around the whole district was one guy, could get to my building at a certain time. And I would say to him, you know what, I forgot his name, John, I can't schedule it then. I have a reading block there. Nobody interrupts the reading block. Nobody interrupts the reading block. Everybody reads for an hour. That's it. But the tuba guy has to be there at that time to change it. So he went to the superintendent, and he's waiting for the superintendent to tell me to change it. And the superintendent said, Bernardo knows what he's doing. He wants his instruction there. You find another way to get the tuba guy to you. To him, or don't send him a tuba guy, which I didn't care about anyway. God forgive me. So political is about competition for resources, for time, for money, for programs. None of you really have gone to board, maybe some of you do. I think Janelle said that our union wants you to kind of round robin attend board meetings, which is a great practice. Just around now, probably already started. If you really want to take a Prozac and have some fun, go watch budget meetings. When someone stands up and says, well, we're not going to have a freshman football team next year. We're going to save $300,000. We're going to eliminate the freshman football team. In the next meeting, you have 300 football players sitting on the board members' desks screaming. Because it's a political priority in that district. Or my daughter works in a district where they had to decide between speech pathologists and the 9th grade football team. And guess who lost? They cut half of the speech pathologist department out. Had to have the football team. It was about value systems and about competition for resources. Symbolic is symbolic. I mean, when you stand up with your class every day and you say the Pledge of Allegiance, you're symbolizing your allegiance to the flag of the United States. Okay, the mission statement on the wall of your school, even if no one knows what it is a symbolic thing that people do. So there are symbolic practices that are extremely important to a building or a district that you need to be aware of. I'm going through those quickly, but if you're thinking about where they sit in your own experiences, you'll see that they're not equal in your eyes, because they're not. And you should be aware of what they are in case you need to go forward with that. There's the values word. I'm just going to mention Schoen here for a moment. Schoen is about something called reflective inquiry. And really what that is really creatively thinking about what you're doing. Now, I'm going to be kind of vague on this because I don't know if everybody's experienced this, but the people whom I've spoken to on the phone the past several days, or have communicated with by way of emails about your action plans, have been part of a reflective inquiry. I can't believe the things that you folks are saying to me as we begin to discuss some of these things. The growth I have seen makes me feel good for you folks. because you see a different perspective on how things come together to make the organization be better than it is. And that's about what we call reflective inquiry. Reflection, where you make the time to reflect individually or with groups. It's a marvelous, marvelous tool. Schoen is the best example of that. So is Argyris and Maslow, but those are the other ones. Those are the ones I would pay attention the most to. I'm not going to talk about Wohlstetter again. We talked about that enough. Now, there is something called site-based management teams in every building by law, by regulation. You're supposed to have one. Probably most of you don't even know whether you have one or not. All right, I'm not going to ask you to vote on that, but I'm going to guess that a lot of you don't even know whether you have one or not. They've changed the name of it sometimes. Sometimes they call it the school improvement team, the Gripe and Groan team. I've seen different names for them, but the official word would be site-based management. That's about group decision-making. And if you look at the regulation, it's 100.111. I did my dissertation on this, is that was supposed to be the think tank group in every building. Every single building was supposed to have one, where they were going to create new plans and programs for kids. Truth of the matter is, it's flunked. The idea didn't flunk. The implementation flunked. Hear me on that. The idea was great. The implementation was very poor. And I'm being charitable when I say that. And some of it has to do with Lencioni. We've talked about Lencioni before, about trust and accountability. So there is a video about that. And there is some other videos here that you want to take a look at. And the last thing I just want to point out before I go over to the PowerPoint is, I know I've showed this to you more than once. Think in terms of this when you hear a decision being made. However, understand that this is very simplistic, that it's not complex enough to capture all of what a decision is about. Highly, highly complex premise. And so, for example, and I know I've talked about this, every decision begins with facts and data. A student was supposed to be referred for CPS. Child was clearly being abused. What do I need to do about that? Well, I need to know the law. What the law is that you have to refer it, number one. Number two, you have to follow a policy process that you learn about in the school law class. All right? And you need to have your data in front of you, because if you don't, you're going to get in a whole heap of trouble about it. In that case, the goal is to protect the child. Now, you have three choices. You really only have one. Maybe two in this particular example. The first choice is to follow the law, follow the policy. The policy handbook and behind your administrator, which you'll learn about again in the law class, is the law of the district. Those policies are put in place because of state education laws, or sometimes criminal laws. So, and you know, and everyone I'm sure knows this, that by law, you must report suspected abuse to the principal. By law, the principal has to convene a group to get the data about that and find out what's going on, and then make a decision about whether they should go forward by calling CPS. Now, there's also a choice two here. Well, there's three choices. I just thought of one. Choice two is, and you can do that anonymously. You don't have to call up Mrs. Smith and say, Mrs. Smith, I'm reporting you for child abuse. You don't have to do that. Although there's 99 times out of 100, they'll figure out that it's you. I got war stories galore about that. Okay, and then there's choice two, where yes, you decide to make the call because the evidence supports it, and you call the parent. I've done that too. Because you know the parent, or you know the parent needs to be but sometimes you call the wife so that the wife will protect the kid against the father. There's things you have to consider here. And that's a second choice. The third choice is to do nothing when it comes to this particular issue. Now watch the arrow. The arrow goes from choices to futuring. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. The arrow goes from choices over to futuring. Watch the big orange arrow, because this big orange arrow goes way over to the outside and goes back to values and feelings. And then watch that arrow come back from values and feelings, goes back into choosing. And I'll make it simple for you. When you future, you if then. If John calls someone up and says, hey, you want to go out for coffee tonight? You if then. Well, if I go out with him, then I got to listen to his nonsense. I don't want to go. Or, yeah, I really want to I want to have a conversation. I want to establish a friendship or relationship with this person. That's an if then. If I put on the black shoes with my green pants, it doesn't match. If I vote for this person for president rather than that person for president, then this is what I can expect. This is the future, I think I say. These are the probable futures, I say. Well, I want a tax cut. I don't know how they're going to get a tax cut because we've cut the billionaires' taxes a million times, but okay, I'll go for a tax cut if I can save a few pennies. Then that's my value. I want to give less taxes, pay less taxes, even if it doesn't make any sense to run the operation of the government or the services the government provides. Okay, if you're following my choice. If-thens. Now, there's deeper than if-thens. I'll come to next week. I won't do it tonight to spend more time on that. There's also something called three-dimensional if-thens, which we'll talk more about next week. But follow the arrow. So if-then, yes, I'll go out with John, or I won't go out with John, or I'll pretend I have something to do. I'll lie. Or I'll tell them they get lost, whatever it is you want to say. Those are all choices in an if-then. Or in this case, if I follow the law, I will report this, and they'll be held to pay, but the child will be protected. But then the child, we hope, will be protected. In that particular case, it was not. Second choice is, yes, I'm going to make the call, and I'm going to inform the responsible adults that they can expect a visit from the caseworker. And I'm not sure what's going to come from that. Well, the third choice is I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to pretend it didn't happen. In which case, I'm going to jail, or I'm going to get sued, especially if something, heaven forbid, happens to that child. Now, but all that goes back to values and feelings. Well, Bernardo does not want to go to jail. And I want that, and my values and feelings are, I want to make sure the child's protected. That's what's making me my choice. If I vote for, the Democrat versus the Republican, I'm looking at bigger government to serve as the needs of people, groups of people. But if I decide if I want to go Republican, I have a different way of looking at things. And that's my values. And so I'm going to vote for the Republicans because my values and my feelings match up with the Republicans more than they match up with the Democrats. That's where the choice comes. The choice comes from your values and feelings, but you've got to do this if-then here in the middle. You've got the future for it. I never said this in a class before. You ready? Capiche? Janelle's smiling, so Janelle capiches? I'm not sure what the word is in plural. All right? Now, I'm going to give you a 5-minute break. I think I'm talking too much. Come back at 5:41. And then we're going to really jump into this if-then in terms of districts or building leaders, futuring skills. And the question is, how much futuring skills do they have? Okay, I'll be back in 5. I am starving. Okay, it's 5:41 and we are back on the trail again. Any questions before I continue? Any yes buts? Okay, Gina, I was thinking about what you were talking about before. Or I forgot what I wanted to say. Give me a second. It seems to me that the culture either that building or the district, I'm just talking in general terms, possible that, and I'm going to be sexist for a second, is testosterone based. Macho things like, is that it's a sign of weakness if you ask.
It's funny you say that because I definitely do feel that there is sexism in my building in particular. There are many things that, I feel like men get away with saying, that when a woman says, like, I've been told that I needed to, not this particular year, but in the past, I don't want to get into the details, but I know, like, with this particular administrator, I feel like it's a lot of his ego that gets in the way of him making decisions. And I know that there are teachers that feel like they're treated a certain way because they're a woman, for sure.
Okay, so it's possible that may be the issue. It wouldn't be the first place where that's happened. I'm going to jump, no one has any questions, so I just wanted to give Janelle that point of view before you move any farther. Well, I know I'm smelling Jessica's pork chop so much, I had to run out and grab something to eat. I was so hungry. I'm gonna, forgive me, I don't like to be read to. I'm gonna read at you for a minute. Now, you have this in the module on the agenda for this week, week 8. But let me read at you. A big piece of futuring is about what we call scenario building. I know we're not going to get into scenario building very specifically today, but next week we will. We'll continue this. Here's a scenario. There's 2 scenarios. One's school-based and one is real, actually, the first one, and the other one is we thought was real. It turns out it's not real. It's not true. However, it's also not educationally based either. So but the themes behind it are both accurate. So stay with me on this. So in February of 2020, 3 years ago, this is what happened. I'm just changing some of the names, but this is essentially what happened. Rich, this is John from LMN District. How are you? Hello, John, I exclaimed. Good to hear from you. We've been waiting on your dates for the training sessions. So are we, he answered. The summer retreat is a big part of what I put in place since I become superintendent here 2 years ago. I've got the dates right here. We can certainly plan those dates into our calendar. However, you do know that there's a major yes, but we both must confront. John seemed confused. Not sure what you mean, Rich. I felt the need to press the obvious. John, what do you have in mind for the coming months? He sounded more confused. Well, there's 5 months of schooling in front of us, and I broke in. John, the pandemic? You do realize there's a pandemic coming? Now we got a little indignant. Well, of course I do. We all do. We know that there is something going on out in Oregon, and I've heard a rumor that people in New York City seem to be getting sick. I broke in again. It's going to be everywhere, don't you think? He was clear about this. Well, yes, sure, but we're out here in the sticks, very rural here, very poor too, as you know. I suppose it will affect us, but only peripherally as it runs its course. Really, John? I have another future for you to consider. What's that? He asked. John, I think that this pandemic is very serious. You can see it in the numbers around the world. It's here. It's bound to spread everywhere. John, I think we're going to need to lock down many non-essential activities. I think they're going to close all of our schools. Well, that sounds pretty extreme, Rich, don't you think? Even if it does, it will only happen in the large population centers. John, if you were in charge of the health and safety of your district students' health and safety, as well as some sort of uninterrupted education, I am in charge of my students' education and of their health care for sure, he interrupted. Then he mused for a moment. Every student has a Chromebook, you know? I nodded. Yes, I know, but yours is a very poor district, as you've told us many times. To what extent do the students have internet access in their houses, in their homes? Yes, he acknowledged. Home usage of the Chromebooks has been very limited. I came to my point. John, so you think that the capacity to continue, hear that word capacity. You think the capacity to continue, let's say some sort of online instruction instead of physical attendance in your buildings could likely be problematic? Do you have the technology infrastructure? Most importantly, the confidence that your entire teaching staff has the professional skills to deliver instruction online? Julie's shaking her head. And that there is support system for and among us teaching staff to do this. When John didn't answer, I continued. Sounds like we have the future for this, for all of this, don't you think? Future, he said, that's a true story, actually. It's not a true story, it's a true story. I'm still shaking my head about it as we speak. It wasn't on Long Island, just in case you're trying to figure out where it was, but that's a true story. And that's about education. Now, this one is not education. But I love this story. I use it everywhere I go. These two things go into a book I'm writing. I'm still playing around with them. An apocryphal story about Oxford University, founded in 1379, speaks about its great dining hall, whose roof was supported by huge oaken beams, as large as 2 feet square and 45 feet long. About a century ago, an inspection of the roof revealed that the timbers were beetle infested and that they would soon not be able to bear the roof's weight. If this were the case, Oxford officials fretted, where would they find the oaks that large from which new beams could be made? The story comes to a happy ending when the Oxford College forester of the time spoke up. He explained that the forester of that bygone era knew that the oaken beams could not last forever and had in fact planted a grove of oak trees against this day. The secret has been passed on from forester to protect the grove's existence until it was needed. The great dining hall was saved. Okay, this isn't finished yet, but just so you know, where the Oxford story shows how Oxford College's royal forest is tuned to the systemic ebb and flow of nature. That is, they futured that one day there would be the need to replace several 100-year-old timbers by planting trees. Then we go to the Superintendent John up here. Now you need to decide, how that all fits in. I hope that you're not thinking that I'm thinking, that you're thinking, that I'm thinking that you should be thinking that a superintendent should be thinking 500 years out. And I kind of am. But I'll compromise with you. I'll say at least 10 years out, for God's sakes. Now, by the way, physiologically, the researchers have found that this includes me and includes all of you, that most people can't think past 10 years out. We're just not able to do it. Our brain physiologically has trouble doing that, unless you're a science fiction writer, I guess. So that makes for an issue about terms of futuring as far as that's concerned. Now, I'm trying to tie futuring back into decision-making. So just bear with me for a moment. Does anybody have any points you'd like to bring up before I reshare? I knew you wouldn't. Now let's go to that. You've gotten these pieces of this PowerPoint too many times. Now I've given you the entire 126 slide PowerPoint. Read my mind, read my lips, understand totally. I don't want you to read 126 slides of anything, okay? Don't do that. But I do want you to make note of some of these slides as I move you about halfway through it, not even halfway through it today. I may have asked you this question before, and I'm not going to ask you to tell me. But I am asking you to make the decision rhetorically, between your ears. And the question is, how do you view the future? I think I told you I'm a Disney idiot savant. I know every bathroom in Disney World, which way to turn left, what tickets to buy. I really know my way around Disney. It's about the only place I ever go to, except for Venice, Nick. And so I'm thinking the first one is sort of like Space Mountain. If you've ever been on Space Mountain, it's a roller coaster in the dark. You can't see where the tracks are going. You have no idea which way it's going the first time, at least when you're on that. We already have those dark roller coaster rides. So to what extent do you think the future is a winding highway? You can't see where it's curling and turning to. It's dips and dives, twists and turns, lefts and rights, ups and downs. I'm sorry, let me take that back. That's the second one. The future is a great roller coaster on an endless night. That's the start. That's the Space Mountain. The first one is it's a winding highway. Now, all of you, except for maybe 2 or 3 of you, live out east. So I don't know how many times you take Southern State Parkway. But those of you who live further west, especially the lady who I think is Laura, I think you're in East Meadow. You're the lady in East Meadow. Then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Southern State Parkway is a dangerous road. So is Northern State Parkway, but in Southern State, it's really bad. There's an accident. There's a fatality every weekend if you read the paper to look for things like that. It twists and it turns, even for people who've driven on it 1,000 times. And people go too fast, and it takes you where it's going to take you, whether you like it or not, and whichever way it winds is what you have to contend with. You have to guess it. There's one on Exodus 17, I think it's pretty sure it's 17, 16 to 17, where I don't know if you can see my hand, where it goes up on a hill, sort of. When you get to the top of the hill, you don't realize that there's a million cars stopped dead at the other side of the hill because it's backed up because Meadowbrook Parkway is coming in from the other side. And people, wrap up their cars and rent other cars because they don't future for that. So that's the winding highway analogy versus the Space Mountain analogy. You may think the future is a mighty river. Now, a river flows downstream, okay? If it's a mighty river, it's pretty much taking you on its own current, but at least you know where it's going and you can kind of navigate it a little bit. You can stay out of the way of the logs and the rocks, perhaps. But it's basically, it's taking you where you're going to go, whether you like it or not. On the other hand, you might think that the future is a great ocean. It's got currents and winds and weather and so forth. It's got icebergs, storms and so forth. But you can navigate it if you have the compass and tools to do that, and a ship that has the capacity to take you where you mean to go, to where you mean to map to it. Or you may think, there are people who do think this. I'll lay out and say, I don't think this, but there are people who think this. Maybe that's what that book is about. Jessica and Nick, the Midnight Library book, is that the future is entirely random. You don't know what's going to happen the minute I end this sentence. So my question to you is, and again, I don't want you to volunteer, but I do want you to consider where you think you sit. Which one of these analogies works for you? Or does another one work for you? Now, here's the next question. And you don't know the answer to this. I'm asking you to guess at this. How many of you think that your view of future is more or less the same view of future that your leaders have? Do me a favor, put some of those in chat. Go into chat. What do you think? Yes, no, not at all, never. I'll wait a few minutes. I'll wait a minute for that. Go into chat and say, how you view future similar or totally different from how you think your leaders or your colleagues, for that matter, see future? Interesting point, Jess. So I'm putting words in your mouth and taking them out again. You don't have to answer me on the chat, but you're standing there telling me that your school's out of control?
No, the way I think of the future, I guess because of the past, which has taught me that the future can be like, there's so much in life that can happen that's unexpected and knock you on your butt, that I like the ocean analogy. There's storms, you don't necessarily know what there will be. There'll also be sunny days. I feel like my principal, who I very much like, but she seems to be I don't want to say controlling because she's not like in terms of sticking her head in the classroom and stuff like that, but she's definitely, you know, operating at 100 miles an hour and takes on a lot. And I don't know. I just think that perhaps she would see it as like she's driving the car.
Okay. You're the only ones who have the courage to put something up there so far that I can see. There we go. Jessica, I knew Jessica Fiso would have something to say. Depends on the subtopic, future of how education is carried out, how teachers will be used. Listen to that message behind your music, Jessica, say. The future of how education is carried out, how teachers will be used. Oh, I misunderstood. I misunderstood the verb used. Okay.
I was able to change my name. Aren't you happy?
Yes, I am. I'm very, very impressed. The rest of the night off, right? Huh. What do you mean by that? So that's not real clear to me.
I think it depends on what we're talking about in education. Are we talking about the future of education, how children will be educated in the future? Are we talking about the laws and jurisdictions of education? Are we talking about how teachers will be utilized?
That
What are
sounds
we
like
talking about?
that sounds like what you're saying is really all about the future of education. So so where are you? Are you in the same place as most everybody in that, or you do you think you're in a different place?
I think with my administrator, I would agree on some things, but others we are polar opposites.
Okay, and don't answer this out loud, but what does that mean? If you're polar opposites, and if there's a critical mass of people who are polar opposites, what does that suggest for how well that school is going to fare?
Well, without saying too much, there was a huge TASH meeting, a huge union meeting about how our school is being ran, and there are no policies, no procedures, and that is to the administration's benefit, because when something goes awry, whose fault is it? It's the teacher's fault. So I'm a very firm believer on policy, procedure, having something to go back on, having a standard measure of operation. And my administrators and district is not. So we would not agree on that kind of stuff.
Okay, well said, very articulate. Juliana agrees with Karen. The future is consistently changing based on decisions in the event. That's what you believe, Juliana, or what you think your group, your is that the same place that your administration would be, or your colleagues?
I would say that my colleagues and my administration is definitely they're futuring. I know my superintendent, after speaking with her, she has, plans for this year, 5 years, 10 years. She definitely looks and plans ahead. But I think realistically, things as they change, especially with our school and the audit and everything that's been going along with that, a lot of things had to change and decisions had to be made, and different utilization of time and professional development opportunities, staff meetings, superintendent conference days, things had to be utilized differently because of those types of situations. And then again, once we are officially off the list, those things will change again, and decisions, the future will change once that situation changes. So I think it's, I have to kind of agree with Karen on that. It's, changing. You can prepare as much as you want, but then you have to be able to deviate based on those what ifs and things that arise.
Bingo. And that's about the capacity word. That's about the capacity word. It goes back to our friend John, who didn't worry about whether he had the capacity. And all of you can have, I'm sure, have war stories about what you had to put up with and to continue to probably have to put up with when the pandemic hit. Now, some of you are thinking, and I know I've said this to you before, I'm talking to Juliana, I'm talking to all of you, that how can anyone have forecast? I don't like the word predict. How many of you could have forecast that a pandemic was going to hit and totally disrupt what we do? And the answer is yes, they should have. There's all kinds of things, if you think about it, all kinds of calamity, all kinds of issues and trends that we are warned about and pay little heed to until it's too late. My wife and I have a joke because she'll make something and I'll say, and something's left over, and I'll say, well, put it in the freezer. She says, what are you going to put in the freezer? You're never going to eat it. So I always used to say, well, someday there's going to be a zombie apocalypse, and you're going to need it. And to some extent, if you even look at the way the food supply chains have been disrupted by the pandemic, it's continue to be a problem, among other things. It's because we didn't create the capacity to deal with those issues. Because we didn't train teachers how to use Zoom, let alone, I'm not just talking about getting on Zoom. I'm talking about using the facilities or the capacity of Zoom or any other video instructional platform to engage kids. Or try to engage them at least. We didn't do that. And I see here the anger in my voice. We didn't future for it. I mean, God forbid we could be attacked by the Russians tomorrow. And I apologize if I sound like I'm a madman, but we could be attacked by Russians tomorrow. And will we be ready for it? Will the army be ready? Jack, they'd be ready, right? But would we be ready? And I don't mean ready totally, because you can't be ready for an invasion very well. This is a crazy possibility, not a probability, but a crazy possibility. Suppose the aliens land in the middle of Montauk Highway tomorrow. Do we have a plan for that? No. Do we have a plan? I had a principal and I think I told you last week about a principal in a charter school in Brooklyn where 17 children from, I think, Colombia show up at her doorstep a couple of weeks ago. They were the immigrant population, a big group of immigrants that came, brought into the United States. And a lot of them were brought to New York City, or maybe out to the island too, I don't know. And they told the principal, take care of it. That was it, take care of it. That's about capacity and that's about planning. Enough said. All right, so I already asked you that. When you get this, somebody mentioned that they like the videos I've been giving you. This particular, I'm not going to show it now, but this particular video about something called the emerging future, which is another word for probable future, is pretty good. It's about 3 minutes long. You may want to watch it. Now, I'm going to skip this one. I may have said this to you before. This is a saying. Come back to that model we've been talking about. When it comes to the future, there are three kinds of people: those who let it happen, those who make it happen, and those who wonder what happened. I would like to think a superintendent or a leader in any building or any organization is the kind of person who's more interested in the middle piece, to take charge of it. And again, what do you believe versus what you think your teachers and your community think as such? Now, I use this term adaptive or transformative. I'm just planting the seed with you for next week on this. So take heed to it, but don't write it on the back of your hand either. Adaptive is what it sounds like. So you see a probable future coming. I think the weather tomorrow, for example, is going to be warm, but it's going to be rainy. So do you adapt to it? So you wear rain gear tomorrow, or you make sure your car gets out, you get out to work a little sooner because you're afraid of the traffic, all right? Or you transform from it. I mean, transformative would mean you radically change what you do, like change your job, or find a way to change the climate. I know I'm being Star Trek silly here with you for a minute, but I'm working from two extremes here. You see a probable future coming. You see increasing number of ELL students showing up at your doorstep. Are you going to adapt to that issue, or are you going to try to do something to transform the staff totally differently from what you've been doing in order to have everybody recreate themselves to deal with that issue in a way none of us can even think of this moment? And that goes back to the issue we talked about before, about knowing what your systems disciplines are, your shared vision, your mental models, and so forth. Knowing how to create. I haven't done very much with you in this class. Knowing how to collaborate. We just talked about that before in decision making. And using futuring skills. I'm not going to teach you futuring skills today. I'm going to teach those to you next week. But they are in the slides if you want to look at it more carefully. Skipping that. There's that scenario word again. I'm not going to get into this today, but a scenario is a story. Think of any science fiction movie or anything. I don't watch Netflix that often, but whatever the latest dysfunctional future is, that's a scenario. Someone says, this is what the future will look like. And we're going to write some scenarios next week. And this is a way to look at it. And I know I probably make you crazy when I show you these things, but here it comes anyway. This is a model. It's based on a book I wrote. And I think it's got pretty good power. If futuring is the axle of a wheel, and what circles around it is collaboration, systems thinking, and theory. Theory U means creativity. That's what futuring depends on. It circles around collaboration, systems thinking, and creativity. Skip that. Skip that. Because futures-based change leadership has relationships with systems, creativity, and collaboration. And that depends on culture. I'm sorry, on futuring. You don't know how to future. You future if you decide which way to part your hair in the morning and whether you're going to wear rain gear tomorrow. But there are ways to forecast the future, to identify probables. Okay? Reduce the possibilities and go to probables. We'll talk more about that next week. And it's all dependent on the ability of your organization's cultural capacity to change. Does it have the chops to change? If you can't run the 4-minute, if you can't run a 5K in under 45 minutes, which is the best I can do lately, all right? My capacity isn't as good as it once was. And to increase the capacity, I have to do certain things, starting with changing weight, losing weight, and also making sure my heart doesn't blow up. But it's about your capacity to change is dependent on the extent to which it's able to recreate itself. Now, this is what I know you can't answer this. Maybe some of you will think about it as you've been doing your APA. I'm seeing some of that emerging a little bit. You actually are looking about recreating what you're doing because you know the strategies that you've identified to solve the issues that you have analyzed need new strategies, need new ideas, not recycling something that already hasn't worked or that you can't afford. Einstein said the definition of insanity was to continue to do the same thing over and over again when it didn't work in the first place. So you just can't add kids to a room and tell the teacher to deal with it. Nor can you necessarily put all those kids with the special needs of any kind off in a corner and then just try to get away with teaching them what you can get away with teaching them with. That's going against our moral purpose as well. So we're talking about recreating with a collaborative purpose as such. Again, capacity to change is systems plus creativity plus collaboration equals capacity to change. If we turn it into a math problem, the numerator would be futuring. And I apologize for reading to you again, but your school is only, measure your school in your head, measure your district in your head right now. Your school is only as good as the extent to which the organization is systemically healthy. And how you do that is estimate its capacity to continue itself in the face of imminent issues like COVID and long-range issues like more
Question.
COVID.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you said that the capacity of an organization is as healthy as the organization sees it,
No,
or
No,
repeat what you said.
no, the capacity of the organization to objectively assess itself for those strengths.
Okay, so what if I'm not being funny, but this is going to come off as I am. What if those people that are evaluating are delusional because their perception is their reality and they don't want to hear anything from the lower man?
Well, that's not a silly question at all. That's a wonderful question. And so that goes back to that premise I gave you earlier today about reflective inquiry. Someone's got to help them figure out that the emperor's not wearing his clothes.
Because if we keep doing the same thing and the same result is being given, that is insanity.
That's insanity, no?
Right.
So if you say, I'm going to do 55 push-ups tonight, and you do 55 push-ups and you still weigh the same as what you weighed in the morning, that's a silly example. If I'm going to continue to do how I treat the students or I treat my faculty, I'm going to get the same results. So I'm a district superintendent or somebody in the cabinet up there. This is what this course is about. I can't be satisfied with the routine answers unless I only want to adapt. Hear that word adapt, Jessica. Now also think about what did I say earlier today? I forgot what I said earlier was pretty profound. I'll think of it in a minute. But am I making sense to you?
Yes.
And someone's got to say the emperor is not wearing her clothes. Empress is not wearing her clothes. The data doesn't tell you that. Data doesn't tell you that things are going so well. That's, remember, we talked about surveys as a dangerous needs assessment. Because surveys can ask silly questions, and surveys are only perceptions. The only way I can get a good surveys together, I have to get down to the root cause issues. And continue, and here's one of those college words, continue the dialogue. When people meaningfully learn how to dialogue with each other, they begin to own up to the weaknesses and the strengths. Engage staff who recognize systemic strengths and weaknesses. Now, your district and Janelle's, and you're the only two who have pointed this out, but I admire you for your courage. I've said, we've got some warts here. We've got some things to talk about. Until it gets past the faculty room bitching and moaning, because that doesn't do any good. And people begin to take some concrete ways to get other people to recognize it. They get the community to recognize it. You're gonna. Here's the word. I knew I was going to say this before. To perpetuate the mediocrity. And this is a blanket statement. Here it comes. May not apply to East Hampton, but it may not apply to East Meadow, but it applies to all the districts in between. On Long Island, you can get away with being mediocre in most places. You can overlook the underserved and get away with it up to a point. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that's what happens, because the bulk of the kids on Long Island are going to be okay, in spite of how teachers teach or the system is set up. They're going to be okay. There are some districts where that is totally not true. I can think of 5 or 6 off the top of my bald head, where you really need to do things to stop the blood from flowing. That's how serious it is. And the state, by the way, Jessica, is not eager to step in. They don't like to do that because it causes a precedent they don't like to, and they've been pretty bad at doing it anyway when they do step in. And so the mess continues because you can get away with it. Watch that, I don't know if you watched it yet, but watch the Finland video. If you watch the
Yes.
Finland, the Finland video shows that the faculty takes charge of the issues that they see and is collaborated with the lead teacher / principal. The different mindset. Each group is valued for itself and they recognize what they need to do. What's not in that video It's a quick story. I asked Jackie when she about this a couple of years ago when she first went to Finland. For example, Europe has a big immigrant problem. Most countries in Europe have a major immigrant problem. Finland recognized it 10 years ago. They began to see an influx of people from Syria moving into their country, and they saw that the trend, that's a futures word. They saw the trend was going to continue to multiply on itself. And what they did was they began to build in foreign language approaches to alleviate that issue before it became something they couldn't handle, head off the problem. They futured. Okay. So when you go back to this saying here, your school is only as good as its systemic health, insofar as it's a great point you made, Jess. It's objectively measured. Okay, we can recognize whether it's got the capacity to continue itself. That means to say that they can be futured. They're okay with recognizing their strengths and their weaknesses. And they know how to motivate their staff to change the directions away or toward the emerging future that they want. Put that under your pillow tonight, because that's big stuff. All right, now you know about this. We've done, I'm going to stop this in a moment, but I'm going to take just a couple more slides up. We've talked about systems disciplines before, our learning organization. You know, sometimes shared vision is just something people give a lip service to. We talked about that. And the question is, and I actually asked you to measure this a few weeks ago, to what extent do these learning organization disciplines exist in your school? And if they don't, then what does the superintendent do about it? And continuing along the same premise, this is a pretty important point here. This OCCC means the organization's cultural capacity. I forget what the other C stands for. What does it look like with and without systems disciplines? Well, the organizational culture, if it's in place, is cohesive. If it's in place, people do think creatively and make proactive decisions. And they know how to collaborate. If it isn't in place, it's haphazard. People are not encouraged to think creatively. Have you been, no, this is a rhetorical question, not to Jessica specifically. Have you been in a building or a meeting where you're not allowed to think creatively? It's not valued. If you've been in a building where they don't have collaborative practice, and Janelle, for example, spoke to that. Janelle, this is right out of the book, right? Would be subject to unilateral or inconsistent decision-making. Now that intersects with this creative thinking. I'm going to skip that for now because it's too late to get into that as such. But this premise goes back to Janelle's point, and I think might ring true for some others. And I've said it to you before. This is an old Mayan proverb. I'm not sure what year it comes from originally. I got it from a book, it's in my book now. We did not put our ideas together. We put our purposes together, and we agreed, then we decided. Is that how your leadership operates? If so, how do they do it? If not, why not? What would you do differently? That's a great, I love that line. I'm gonna put that on my tombstone one of these days. So that's about getting to collective purpose. And I am going to stop somewhere around here. Yeah, I'm going to stop here. So that's slide. Somebody tell me what slide that is. Slide 28. Somebody going to pick it up in 28. I'm not going through every single slide. I'm skipping over things. Next week, I'm going to show you how to future. I'm going to make your hair hurt. If I haven't made your hair hurt already, your hair is going to hurt. So get ready. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you next week at the same time, same bat station. Remember, you should be posting 5 slides people should be just responding to 3 of those posts over the next week. There's also another discussion question there. And then 2 weeks from today, you're going to revise whatever you're going to revise, and also offer me, email me a narrative to go along with that, and then we're home free. Okay, so we'll stop there. Meanwhile, you'll have this futuring thing under your belt, and money back guarantee that will stand you in good stead in lots of places. Questions, comments? Laura, you're going to stay on. Don't let me lose you. Questions, comments? Suggestions? I don't feel like being criticized. If anybody wants to criticize, you can put it in the chat room. Okay, Laura's right in the middle of my screen. You stay right there, Laura. Good job tonight. I threw a lot at you, I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
good
good
night.
night.
Have a
Give
good
me a little piece there, Jess, just a little piece. A little cherry pepper on top. Good night.
Too bad we ate them all.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good
Thank you,
night.
Dr. Bernardo.
You're welcome.
Grazie.
Grazie. All right, Jessica, I haven't looked at your stuff yet. I'm going to do yours tomorrow, okay?
Okay, so do you want me to get off?
Yeah, well, unless you have a question.
Okay, nope, I'm good.
All right, see you tomorrow. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Maybe I'll even tell you to call me. Depends on what I'm doing tomorrow.
Okay,
All right?
Bye.
Take care. I know. Good job. Okay, Mrs. McNeese, you're from East Meadow, right?
Yes.
I remember that. And I like the way I said, do you like the way I said that? From East Meadow to East Hampton?
Yes, I think Jess is further west than me though. She's DOE,
That's true. I forgot about
Jess
that.
Valley.
I cued it when I said East Meadow to East Hampton.
It flowed, right?
I knew a principal there. You're too young to remember. It's called Mangano.
Oh yeah, Tom Mangano, yes.
Yeah, we did our doctorates together.
Oh, okay. I never worked for him, but like earlier on in my career, he was the principal at another school, and only good things was all I heard.
And I know, I think he left the district. I went to Manhasset, I think, the music director. Forgot his name. I did his doctorate with me at St. John's. I'm pretty sure we went to Manhasset.
I don't know.
The guy was first class. His wife, maybe his wife worked in the district too. I'm not sure. She's doing her doctorate now.
Oh, okay.
And then I kind of know, I don't know him well enough to say hello to him, but I certainly met him enough times. The former superintendent, whose name I never remember, but it's an Irish name, is
Don Stirs? No,
no, the one who's
not superintendent. Lou D'Angelo?
no, the one who became the Nassau BOCES superintendent.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's still around.
Yeah.
All right, so remind me what you and I are doing. I don't remember.
Okay, so you
Right.
looked at my plan
Yes.
and you commented on the piece below, where I was kind of just explaining the situation as it is right now. Originally, you had commented that it was a good beginning, but inadequate for all issues and causes needed to be addressed, and where was my needs assessment?
Yes.
So I watched a lot of videos and I included all of that. So I'm not sure what you want to
Let me bring it up. I can get, no, if I give you, is it in front of you?
Yes, I have it.
All right, so I'm gonna give you,
Oh, you want me to share?
yeah, if I can figure out how to do this. Security. Share screen. I'm giving you share rights, so you can bring it up.
Okay.
I remember writing, I forget the context. Okay, so I made some points, and then you said you fixed them, and then you've revised them? Or you haven't revised them. Have you revised them? You're muted, Laura.
How did I get muted when I shared? That's so
It
strange.
happens once in a while.
Sorry. Yes, I revised. Originally I had everything at the top row and you had said drop down
Yes.
like we had. So I used your sample and all of that. I included the needs assessment. I tweaked some other things. The criteria you had asked about, and I think I had said it depended upon the BOE approval and all of that. So I tweaked that, and then this was where you commented, so I wasn't sure if there was something that I was missing down here or I don't know.
Let's go back up to the template for a minute.
Okay.
So obviously my question is going to be, how would you know that the needs assessment is worked?
Okay, so I had put teacher and parent feedback, students' grades, and behavior plans.
All right, now, the way I read that,
I'm sorry?
the way I read that is that that's this one, I can't highlight it. The way I read that is that you have that or incorporate 15:1 settings. I would see, so that should be that teacher feedback piece. That box, that cell should be up higher, not where you have it.
So I think this is all, it's connected, but because it ran out of space on the page, it
Right.
looks like two different rows.
No, I mean, you have to go higher. If you, so let's, like, for example, if you see this piece here, it says teacher, parent, and feedback, students, grades, behavior plans.
Oh, that needs to be placed in more of a higher row.
Well, no, I take it back. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's your criteria for the 15:1, right?
Well, really for both.
Both what?
Well, I guess. So I had said incorporate the 15 ones.
Yes.
And in order to, I'm thinking financially for the district, in order to do that, we'll have to reduce the number of ICT classes. So there was a balance there that wouldn't cost the district more money.
That's great, but like, go back up to the top screen there. How are you going to evaluate the needs assessment? What's the criteria for that?
Evaluate the needs assessment.
How will you evaluate the success of the root cause analyses?
Oh, so that's where this should be?
No, where you have that, that's fine. But you don't tell me how you're going to assess the assessment. Or how you're going to assess the quality, the quality or the success of the root cause analysis.
So like after the assessments are done, like how I would evaluate it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So I'll give you an example. One would be, you get a good response. All right.
Meaning
a good
children
response.
are placed where they,
No, I'm talking
Where
about
is
the
it
needs
perfect?
assessment. How would I know that the needs assessment worked? Well, I got a good response from people. I got a broad response. I got some good ideas from them.
okay,
If you went down to root cause analysis, see, this is another strategy. So strategy one would be needs assessment. Can't talk, I'm very tired. Strategy two would be root cause analyses. How would you know that this was a successful strategy? Well, you got some good ideas.
okay.
Nothing. I'm saying it's not something that sounds like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done that for 15:1. That's good. That's the same idea.
Okay.
So go down now lower. To the next page. Okay, and this we understand. So this one here on the left is the same, is extension of the 15:1, right?
Yes.
All right, so you're good. So you have that down.
Yeah.
What's missing is your attention to your needs assessment thinking and how you're going to decide whether all these ideas that you ran at people through the root, whether I'm sorry, I'm very tired.
Yeah, it's okay.
All these ideas that emerged from the root cause analyses helped you continue to go forward. Like, so what you've done, if you think about it, is, and again, this is an artificial exercise. It's not a true exercise, and we both understand that.
Right.
You've leapt, L-E-A-P-T, from the needs assessment to the root causes to a solution. And your solution is 15-1,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So really what you're saying is the 15-1 answers these root causes. I don't know that they do, but you're saying that they do.
Yes.
So you may want to put something in there to say that they're aligned. These ideas, the root causes are aligned to a smaller setting for students,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
Let's take it from something silly. Suppose, I'll use me as the excuse because I wouldn't accuse you of this. Suppose my strategy was to lose 15 pounds, God willing. All right. How would I know that it was successful?
Well, you're going down in weight
There you
when
go.
you measure yourself, when you weigh
There you go.
yourself.
Exactly. So you need to show that you know how to evaluate the strategies that you have.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
So that's what you need. And then you can flesh these out when you write the narrative up. Don't write
Okay.
the narrative up until you get some feedback.
Okay. So I would explain that down here.
Well, you could, but in the meantime, as your narrative, is that going to be your narrative?
When you say narrative, you mean like how I would explain this whole process?
Well, not only that, but also showing what kind of thinking that you invested into it. That's
Okay.
right. Why did you
Mhm.
think what you thought? So
Okay.
that's why I think I said this is a good beginning.
Yes.
Which you began to talk about, but then you kind of stopped.
Mhm.
Right?
Okay.
All right. So we're good?
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, I'm very happy. I'm sorry to get to you sooner.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, no, my pleasure. I enjoy working with everybody that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care now.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.